Courage, vision, resilience. It's more than just a journey. It's a universe of endless possibility, where a single idea can change a man's life, creating new worlds from the ground up. I am Ricky. I'm your guide through the epic stories of Web3 pioneers. Join me and enjoy the podcast. The Tales of Web3.
GM, welcome
Yeah.
to the Tales of Web3, where we dive into the scene, we go behind the scene with the most epic builders in Web3 and experience and learn from what they did in the past, that what made them who they are today. Today we are welcome Abdul, the head of DeFi at Monet, to share about his journey, the lessons that he learned throughout his years at crypto. So welcome, Abdul.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Ricky.
Yes, I'm super excited. Ever since our last chat, at the dinner, I definitely wanted to learn more about you, right? So, for the first part, like, please just introduce yourself, how you get into Web3, and then how do you join Monet?
Yep. Thanks for having me here. And yeah, I'm Abdul. I'm the head of DeFi at Monad. My journey in Web3 actually goes all the way back almost 9 years at this point. So the first time that I got exposed to crypto was in 2015. At the time, I was not working in crypto. I was growth hacking for a few fintech startups, and one of the startups ended up paying me in Bitcoin. And that was the first time that I got the asset. I did not know what to do with it, so I just kind of held on for about 2 years. And then 2 years later, I see that the Bitcoin that I got was worth a lot more. And then the entire space was going up pretty fast. I got exposed to some ICOs, participated in the Tron as well as the ETH which is not now called Aave. Those ICOs, it was a really interesting time. One of the concepts that really fascinated me back then was something that was called open finance, which later on rebranded to DeFi. And I participated in those ICOs, but then 2018 was extremely rough.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything went to zero, except just a few quality coins. And I was still kind of looking at crypto part time, just some specific sectors that really caught my attention, and then kept on kind of spectating on the space throughout 2018, 2019. We had some, it was a boring time, but then summer of 2019, things started getting really interesting with Binance IEOs, so Harmony, Matic,
Yeah.
which is now called Polygon, like all those IEOs happened back in the day. It was a really exciting time. And then around 2020 is when DeFi as a concept, when it rebranded, it really started picking up steam with Uniswap V1 and all of these other DeFi protocols that were launching. I was still focused full time outside of crypto. But then around the start of the summers of 2020 is when meaningful capital started to flow into crypto. And I thought, okay, maybe everything that I read on white papers is not a meme, and there's actually a serious industry that's going to come out of this. So I was a happy participant in DeFi summer of 2020. The Yearns, the Uniswaps, Sushi Swaps, and all the different forks that came out, participated in a lot of those. And then eventually, right after DeFi summer, around September, October of 2020, is when Binance launched one of the first alt EVM layer one blockchains called Binance Smart Chain. Since I was a Binance user for a pretty long time, I ended up pretty much using the chain on the first or second day of its launch, and ended up becoming one of the first 1,000 people on the PancakeSwap Telegram. And it was a
Whoa.
it was a yeah, it was a pretty magical time back then. You had like crazy yields on a lot of things, and through those chats, I eventually ended up finding a project which was a yield optimizer that was called Advanced Crypto Strategies, and joined them, and then worked with them for about a year and a half, heading their growth efforts, wearing a lot of different hats in the process. I was at points running their Twitter, doing BD, managing a lot of the farm emissions for different wallets, doing a lot of different things. And in the process, I interfaced with 6 to 7 different ecosystem teams, including Binance Smart Chain, Phantom, Avalanche, Harmony, Aurora, and then eventually around 2022 is when I moved on from there, and then I joined Say Network as a BD lead, worked with them for about a year, and then last year in July I joined Monad as a BD lead, and most recently moved into the head of DeFi position.
That's hell of a journey. Like many years of the DeFi, the BD experience. And yeah, I would definitely love to learn more about like the BD side of things, right? The experience, the lessons I learned. But most importantly, like how do you evolve as a BD, right? Because for me personally, right, I've been in the space for 4 years now, as a BD, right? And I definitely see myself in sort of different stages, right? Where at start you only know how to do cold DMs, reach out, schedule call with everyone you met, right? And gradually evolving to another stage and another stage, right? And I feel like as the head of DeFi or head of BD, like definitely like in another zone, right? I want you to share more about that side of things,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, it's a really good question because I feel like as a BD person, there's a lot of evolutions that you'll experience both as a young BD and also depending on what stage the project is at where you're working. So initially, when I started doing BD was like almost 4 years ago, when I was doing growth at DeFi Protocol. And back then, there was a really strong Anon culture within the DeFi community. Most of the founders did not dox themselves because of regulatory concerns, and people were basically just behind pseudonymous names. And the way that BD worked back then was basically just messaging people on Telegram and then keeping everything asynchronous over Telegram. You never hopped on a call with them. Like the entire conversation happened either on a group chat or just over DM. And that was the case for me for the longest time. And it was only until I joined the BD team at Say in 2022 is when I started taking calls regularly. So at the DeFi protocol, I did take BD calls, but it was like maybe 1 out of 10, whereas the remaining 9, like the entire BD work, was entirely over Telegram chat. Versus in 2022, when I was at Say, it was the depth of the bear market. There was a lot of hustle that I had to do at that point to basically get our foot in the door. People did not know who we were, so just telling them about what we're building, why it's interesting for builders, getting their attention. So I went through that phase, and then eventually, when I joined the Monad team, it was a similar stage because Monad was quite early stage when I joined last year. A lot of people did not know about Monad back then the way that they do today. And usually, when I would hop on calls, it would take a lot of hard pitching for them to understand the value prop of what Monad brings to the space before we could even dive into synergies. And usually, the first response that you would get from people when you tell them that you're building a new chain is like, "Oh, why do we need another L1?" Right? So there's always a lot of pushback.
Yes.
Obviously, we went through that last year, and over time, it's kind of like a snowball effect, and the snowball keeps on getting bigger and bigger every time you keep on stacking wins. And then obviously, there's a point when you have a decent number of teams to refer to from your ecosystem, and then the marketing flywheel and the community flywheel is working at the same time. And all of these three factors in tandem work together to help make the BD work a lot easier for every subsequent win that you get. So if I were to compare the BD work at Monad a year ago versus the BD work right now, last year we would spend anywhere between 4 to 5 minutes on a call just explaining what Monad is, what we're building, why we're building it, and how we're building it. Versus now, when we hop on a call, everybody already knows about Monad and they know everything about what we're doing. Shout out all the people on our team that are hopping on podcasts and like spreading the word about Monad and getting all that mind share. So now when usually people hop on calls with us, they already know 80% of what's out there, and the remaining 20% are questions that they have for us, which are more technical in nature, usually things that are not public knowledge, and we will spend time, kind of clarifying some of those things for them. So it's really changed, A, from that perspective, and then B, last year when we were kind of starting off, a lot of the people that we were talking to were not super open to the idea of Monad. Again, I feel like social validation has a really big impact in your BD efforts. Also, the fact that if I'm doing BD for an ecosystem and there's no other team building in the ecosystem, and I come to you and I'm
Yeah,
like, hey, Ricky, I want you to deploy your DApp. You're like, okay, I'm definitely not going to be the first person to do it. Somebody else comes in first, they validate it, and then I'm going to do it. Versus if I come to you and I tell you, hey, Ricky, you're building a DeFi protocol. There's 100 other DeFi protocols that are building, and then you're like, okay, wait, if 100 other DeFi protocols are building here, why am I not building in this ecosystem, right? So I feel like that usually plays a pretty big role, and it's kind of helped us get to a point now where the BD conversations that we're having are really meaningful, and we're diving straight into synergies, trying to figure out the best ways for protocols to find a PMF within the Monad ecosystem to help them get activation from the community and bootstrap users.
what are the one thing that you think you and the BD team did really, really well in terms of, from nobody knows about you guys to now, right? Everybody jump into a call, knows 80-90% of what you guys are doing, excited to deploy. What are the one thing, the secret sauce?
Yeah, yeah. So if I were to point out only one thing that I think Monad has, which is probably our biggest asset, even ahead of the tech that we're building, is 100% our community. Monad has the strongest community in the space, and we take a lot of pride in that. And we respect that as our biggest asset, and we treat it as such. We have a lot of community events that have been happening recently. And there's so many talented people in our community that are creating so much content, so much memes, graphics, videos, and they're just extremely excited about what's being built behind the scenes. So that is definitely something that people see on Twitter. And it's really rare to
Exactly.
have such a big community excited about a product that's not even live yet. So yeah, I think like that is definitely one of the biggest factors. And when I hop on BD calls, people say like, "Oh, I've seen your community; it's so good," and we want some part of it, right?
Yes, exactly. Just to dive a little bit deep inside, how do you think like you guys are able to build that community since day
Yeah.
one, right? I mean, it's like an epic achievement, but like I think people are all curious.
Yeah, yeah. If I had a dollar for everybody for every time somebody asked me that question, I'd be a millionaire at this point. But yeah, I think we have an extremely good community flywheel. We have really smart people on our team that have really articulated what a good community flywheel looks like. And one of the things that almost got memed last year was Keone saying how we don't take shortcuts to build what we're building. And the same kind of thing applies to building a community, whereas there's no shortcut to building a community. So what you see in the Monad community right now is really just efforts of the past 18 months or so of continually curating members in the community, providing value, creating good vibes, and just promoting community champions. So one of the things that our team is always steered away from are fake community boosting platforms or questing platforms, things that will bring in like 40,000 people on your Discord in one day, but then they're all, mercenary farmers or something, or people that will never contribute value to the Discord. And then our team has also been really good in creating community champions, empowering them, recognizing them. So overall, I think eventually you want the community to be self-fulfilling in a way where you have champions from within the community who are helping each other, and that is the only way that you can scale community. because obviously at a certain point your community gets so big that it's impossible for an internal team to manage it all.
Exactly. And I also like deeply agree with like the part of like, I think anyone who joins a community in the first, they wanted to contribute, but they wanted to find similar people who are interested and then they wanted to be seen, right? That's all that matters. If they join somewhere, they saw our bots, our farmers asking about Win token, like they're gonna leave, right? No matter like, so I totally agree with that. And thanks for sharing. And like, yeah, back to the BD side of things. Please name a few like BD teams out there, right? Obviously, besides the Monad team, because you guys are killing it out there. But like other teams that you think is gonna make it, and then what are things that you, from your observation, right? They did really, really well.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So apart from our team or itself, and yeah, Monad has a killer BD team. I think other teams that are doing really well, and this is coming from personal observation as well as BD conversations, obviously. So when we talk to projects, they usually bring up some of the other chains that they're talking to, that they're negotiating with, etc. I think one team that I really respect is the Omni team. So the person leading BD over there is Graham.
Omni.
Yeah, like Graham is a really good friend of mine. We go way back, almost 2 years ago. We started working on BD together at Say in the trenches in the pit of the bear market. And yeah, he's a great BD person. The reason why he's good, I think, is because he's really good. He's a people person. He really has a knack for networking with people, knowing a lot of people, and essentially being a really good a person that can carry conversations, and have meaningful relationships with people. So I think he's like a super connector, which is a really strong skill to have as a BD person. And right now, obviously, he's also running the most goated BD chat in the space, which is called Proof of BD. It is the most sought after BD chat that a lot of people have asked me to get an invite for. Um, but yeah, apart from Omni, I think two other teams whose names really come up in BD conversations are one is Movement. I think Movement is doing a pretty good job in terms of their BD. And it's just you can tell that they're grinding hard. Usually, a lot of teams that I talk to have either already talked to the Movement team or they're in the process of talking to them. So shout out head of BD Torab. He's a good friend of mine, and I think their team is doing a really good job at BD. And then the third one would probably be Arbitrum, and this is for two reasons. One, I think Arbitrum as an ecosystem is one of the ecosystems that I look up to the most, because I think over the past few years, they're one of the most successful ecosystems that have come out in the EVM space. And then secondly, also because I still talk to a lot of teams, and usually a lot of those teams are in touch with the Arbitrum team. And one of the things that surprises me is Arbitrum is one of the biggest EVM ecosystems out there. And for their BD team to still be on top of all the top up and coming projects out there, I'm just, kind of surprised by how they're managing to stay on top of everything despite the scale of their ecosystem. So it's something that's super impressive, and it's something that I'll look up to.
Indeed, it's super impressive. Once you hit that like stage, right, earning more than 50% of the entire market share of all the L2 to still be able to hit on to BD calls, finding new projects.
Yep.
It is indeed amazing. And yeah, thanks for sharing the three BD teams. I think I really love these people as well. And there's a lot for us to learn from them. And
Yep.
yeah, for the next part, I would love to like ask for you a few tips that you have for someone who might just started their Web3 BD career, right? What are some tips you wanted to share with them?
Yeah. I think one of the first things that I mentioned here is, and I actually wrote a Twitter long post about this a little while ago, is that I think if you're a young BD person, it's really important to be curious and go down rabbit holes, is how I think about it. Um, Building specialized knowledge in a certain sector turns out to be extremely, extremely valuable at a later stage. So my personal example for this would be back in late 2020 and early 2021, when I was working for the DeFi protocol, I was spending anywhere between 3 to 4 hours a day on block explorers. So we didn't have any fancy analytics tools or Dune dashboards or token terminals back in the day. I don't even think DeFi Llama existed back then. There was like DeFi Pulse and a few other simply ranking protocols by their TVL. That's all there was. And I was just spending a lot of time on block explorers, just understanding how DeFi protocols work, how different contracts work, and if there was an exploit, I'd be curious to go and learn why and how that happened. And I think during that process, I ended up understanding the inner workings of a lot of different complicated DeFi protocols, which at the time I used to think it was a useless obsession, which would never be helpful. But to this day, all the knowledge that I ended up building at that time ended up being really powerful. And one of the things that I talked about in my Twitter post was that as a young BD person, you have more time than money, and at a certain age, you will start struggling for time, and you will not have as much time anymore. So when you're young, it's good to go down rabbit holes, build that specialized knowledge, and it's going to pay off a lot in the long term. And as a follow up to that, some of the people ask me like, what are some areas that you would recommend for people to build specialized knowledge around. So back then for me it was DeFi. Obviously DeFi internally itself has like 20 sub verticals. For right now, if young people are looking to dive into certain areas, some sectors that I'm personally extremely bullish on would include things like RWAs, AI, social fi, NFT fi. So a lot of verticals that have yet to kind of take off fully. I think developing specialized knowledge around them would pay off pretty well. Then apart from that, another piece of advice that I usually give a lot of people is that as a young BD person, the best thing that you can do is take as many BD calls as possible. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thought it broke off. Yeah, so as a young BD person, it's really important to take as many BD calls as possible because practice makes perfect. And I'll quote Bruce Lee here because he has a quote that I really love. He said it's something along the lines of, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks, but I fear the man that has practiced the same kick 10,000 times." So the more time that you spend on perfecting your pitch, iterating on your pitch, eventually it will get to a point where it's flowing so naturally where you will be able to modify your pitch on the spot. And that is really important as a BD person because you need to understand who your prospect is, what his pain points are, and how do you maneuver your pitch in real time to hit all the right spots so that the other person by the end of the call is like, oh, this guy understands my problem, and maybe I should work with him. So yeah, those are some things that I would really recommend for young people that are starting out in Web3 BD. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just all about putting in the reps. So there, obviously, you can speed run that process. If for example, if it takes 10,000 calls to be the perfect BD person, let's assume I'm going to get there in 10 years if I'm taking like 100 calls a month or whatever. Like I haven't in the math behind this, but I'm just giving you an example. If there's another person that takes 200 calls, he's probably going to get there in 5 years, right? So yeah, the more reps you put in, the better you get over time is how I think about it. And then it's also really important to reflect on your BD calls. If you're getting pushback or your pitch is not landing on people, it's important for you to reflect with team members on what is the pushback, what is a good response to that pushback, and how do you iterate on your BD pitch so that it lands better.
This is gold. I'm definitely gonna do like a separate clip for this. This is yeah, thanks for sharing. It really benefit a lot of us. And yeah, that put us to the last part. And it's like a typical Tales of Web3 question, very open-ended, right? But please share one of a story of Abdul, right, along all these years in Web3, right? The most interesting stories that you want people to learn more about you, right? And then probably that something that only you are able to do or achieve, right? So yeah, I'm gonna leave the stage to you.
Got it. Yeah, so I have a really funny and slightly embarrassing story, but I think it would be interesting to share on this platform. just to give people a sneak peek on how big of a degen I used to be back in the day. So, I mean, this is not about me getting rugged or exploited. I've already had that done dozens of times. But back in 2021, May of 2021, there was a pretty big market crash where Bitcoin dropped like 30% or something in one day. I believe it was like May 19th, 2021 or something. And that was the first peak of the last bull market after the second peak that happened in November. And when that was happening, I opened an on-chain leverage position on through a lending protocol, and I had a liquidation price of $30,000. And
Whoa.
obviously, I was really stressed that I'd get liquidated. And funny enough, the price dipped down to 29,700. And as soon as I saw the price drop down to 29,700, I just closed my laptop screen and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm cooked, and this is done. And then I was like, yeah, I'll just forget about the money because it's liquidated, it's done now. And then a few hours later, I log back in my laptop and I see that the position's still there. And I was confused. I was like, wait, the price went below my liquidation price. How did I not get liquidated? And it was confusing. I went and checked my wallet. There was no liquidation. Nothing of the sort happened. And then I went and asked a few friends of mine who had gotten liquidated, who had higher liquidation prices. And I asked them, I was like, hey, my liquidation price got hit. So what happened here? And then they told me, they're like, oh, when the flash crash happened, the chain, it got congested and the Oracle price stopped updating. So by the time the chain got uncongested and the Oracle price started reporting again, the price was above my liquidation price, so I never got liquidated. And then eventually, I did not get out at break even, but I saved a significant loss that I would have made from that liquidation. So that's a really, really funny story that a really few friends of mine know, but I hope you enjoyed that.
I really enjoy it, and then this is so funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that.
100%.
And then, like, before I let you go, like, I wanted to give the stage for you to share more, just like the major updates, the things that you guys at Monad are doing, right? And why people should be excited for. Because I do think there's a lot of alphas coming, and yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so things are coming along really great at Monad. We're gearing up, for one of the biggest milestones ahead of us, which is the launch of our public testnet, which is going to be happening later this year. And as we gear up for that, obviously there's a lot of excitement from users, community, from builders, and we have a lot of teams that are really keen to deploy ASAP. And our team is taking a number of initiatives to support early stage builders and help them build products on Monad that would not be possible anywhere else within the EVM. So some of the areas that we're really excited about are consumer crypto or high fidelity DeFi, and we have two initiatives ongoing right now. One is called Mach 1, which is a 4-week accelerator program with master classes from some of the best veterans in the industry that are going to be coaching early stage teams on how to take their project from an idea to an MVP and beyond. And then the second initiative is called Monad Madness, which is
I saw that.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. It's a pitch competition that is going to be happening in New York in October and in Seoul in December. And it has $1 million in prize money with over $60 million soft committed by VCs for funding. So yeah, these are some initiatives that we're really excited about, and hopefully we'll be following up with the testnet. So there's a lot to look forward to in the Monad ecosystem.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And that put us to an end for this week's for Tales of Web3.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Ricky. This is a good